What's up? Hey, hello everyone. Wow, so today we are back going to be talking about Survivor season 46, episode 11. We are just a few episodes away from the finale of Survivor season 46. So exciting. So, my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and this is the continuation of the Q curse. Or the idol curse, some people are saying. Basically, yet another person goes home with an idol in their pocket. Wild and wacky time.
All five idols have been taken out either by being medevaced with Randon, or four people now this season have played their idol correctly. And it's also funny because Jess played that fake idol in the pre-merge, and she's the only one to have played the idol, but it was the fake one. So yeah, I think next week they're going to hide an idol and someone's going to find it, and maybe we can get four in a row here. I think that would be pretty funny.
That would be really funny. I just think it's really fun that no one is correctly playing idols because I feel like if everyone who had an idol correctly played it, right now our cast would probably look very different than it does right now. So I feel like it's kind of frustrating to see someone go home with an idol in their pocket, but also it's kind of fun and messy to see someone go home with an idol in their pocket. And I feel like that's why this season, especially, has been so enjoyable for me because I feel like fun and messy is just its tagline.
Exactly. It's like that Dr. Doofenshmirtz meme, like, "Oh, like, it's weird that this happened twice. I would have 2 pennies, to that one." And it's like, "Okay, now it's happened multiple times. Maybe it'll happen again next week. Like, what are the chances of this?" And it's extra funny because every single week since Hunter being voted out, Hunter on his Instagram story posts, like, this little picture of the people's faces that got voted out with their idols on clowns. Basically, like, all three of them have messed up royally here and they're clowns.
Yeah, they really are clowns, especially because I feel like you can argue that all of them should have known that their name was coming up. Like I feel like Tiff is the one who is the only one I would call a genuine blindside. Like I feel like Hunter definitely should have known to play his idol. I feel like Venus definitely should have known to play her idol. So definitely clowns, all of them.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, okay, a blindside would be that you'd had no inkling that your name was coming up and you're blindsided. But for these idol vote outs, it's like, okay, for this week, Venus knew that her name was the other name on the chopping block. And we hear her say in confessional, yeah, if I can hold on to the idol one more time, it shows that I have a good social game. Maybe that's a game winning move, similar to Tiffany's exit last week in her last confessional on the TV. It was saying basically, like, oh, I should have played the idol. I was holding on to it for too long. I was trying to keep it for next vote. So it is really interesting. Like, if it's your name versus someone else's name and you have immunity safety by playing this advantage that you have, they're holding on to it a little bit too long.
Yeah, yeah. So also we've kind of seen that finding the idol is not as difficult the second time around. Like once they knew that Tiff went home with an idol, like Venus found it almost immediately, or it feels like immediately for us the viewers. So it's not like you have to be worried of like, oh, I play my idol, I might not find it again. Like there's still a pretty good chance that you could find it again if you were looking.
And that's what we've said before, like, better safe than sorry, hindsight's 2020 kind of thing. But like, if you found it once, you can try to find it again. And like we heard Venus say this episode, she knew where Randon got his, she knew where Tiffany found hers. So that's a lot of information and very helpful to finding your next one. So say Hunter did play it or Tiffany played it. They already knew where they found their first idol, so maybe that could give them a leg up finding another idol.
For sure. Because you might also be like, oh, they're not going to put it in the same spot twice. So you have an entire area of the island where you know not to look. So,
Yeah. So we start off this episode, a great cutscene. It's Liz from last week saying, I'm pissed. And then you cut to previously on Survivor. It was Chef's Kiss. I bet the editors were having so much fun with this because, like, as a viewer and as someone who edits my own YouTube videos, I was like, this is good.
yeah, I feel like I thought that maybe they were just using it because it was like such an iconic moment, but it actually like came up again this episode. Liz being pissed. Like it was a genuine part of the story. So I was really happy that they were able to get even more use out of that footage because it was super great. We sang its praises last week. So I love it.
The food drama continues. We start the episode off with Kenzie being mad and sad that she was left out last week. She wanted it to be her plan, her move to vote her number one ally out, like we saw. She wanted to be the mastermind behind the Tiffany vote. And then we see Charlie throwing Maria under the bus this episode a lot, which good for him. He's doing this very well of like shoving Maria under there, distancing himself from her while also still having the option to work together with her. I'm like, this is pretty good. He's very good at faking it, not having that big ego like we saw with Liz wanting to take Tevin's role in the Soda blind side, Tevin thinking that he did it over Venus, and all of them sort of little bit fake fighting with each other over who's the real mastermind. Charlie here is like, yeah, great job, Maria. This was totally your move and your move only. I'm so proud of you. This was a great move. Like, good for him. He's doing it well and not having an ego about it.
Yeah, I do wonder how much, like, if he does get to final tribal, how well are you going to be able to kind of reverse course and be like, I gave Maria all this credit, but here's actually how I contributed. Because I feel like it's great for him for lowering his threat level. I've seen a lot of people be like, it's amazing that Charlie's name has ever never come up, especially because he's playing pretty hard. But it's kind of that double-edged sword of the more you make yourself seem like not a threat in this phase of the game, the harder it might be to make yourself seem like a deserving winner when you get to final tribal council.
I agree. I think if Charlie does make it to the end, it will be interesting to see how he can claim these moves and not like to be the driver of the car, basically. Because right now he's like, okay, I'm the passenger. Maria, you were the one who made this vote. X person, you made this vote. I'm just the number for you. So I think that can be difficult to navigate because if you do make it to the end, people might be like, no, actually, that was my move. Like, you are blatantly lying to the jury. It's difficult to try to claim moves at Final Tribal Council if the jury doesn't really see that as your move, if they see it as someone else's move. And maybe that's why we're seeing everyone try to claim a move as theirs for their resume because it is difficult to do later. It is interesting though, because we do hear Kenzie say that Charlie's like Maria's jester. He has no resume moves. We also hear Venus say this episode that she's questioning how strategic Charlie really is. So that's sort of bad and negative for him. He needs to figure out how to get that respect at the end while also managing that threat level. Like, can he be like, actually, Maria and I did all these things together, but here's what I did. I was driving this vote, or will people not believe it?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people who feel like it makes sense for Charlie to win based on what we as viewers are seeing, but I feel like it's one of those things where we've seen before that the viewer's experience is not necessarily going to be the same as the experience of the people who are living on the island. So I think that a lot of the people who really want Charlie to win like might end up disappointed depending on how well or how poorly he can sell himself at Final Tribal, if he can even get to final tribal. Like it's possible that Maria realizes like, oh, Charlie has been with me for a lot of my moves, even though I think it's obvious that I'm the one who did all the work. Maybe she still tries to cut him. So yeah.
Yeah, Charlie, it's interesting. Yeah, it's wild. I'm like, for Charlie, I think it'll be interesting to see how he can navigate this end game. It's also interesting we see Q say this episode that Venus is a challenge threat. She was so close this challenge, but then still no one's bringing up Charlie's name, that Charlie won 2 individual immunities back to back, which is interesting. Like, okay, Do they not see Charlie as a threat, so they don't really care that he won those challenges? Was it because they wanted him to win those challenges because he beat Hunter and then he beat Tiffany? So obviously Charlie had to win. Otherwise, we couldn't have blindsided these people with idols if they potentially had an idol. So it's interesting to see, like, okay, the different perceptions there. Or you might just say, like, Q needs Charlie because they're in a technically a 4-person alliance with Charlie, Ben, Maria, and Q. Q's not going to throw out Charlie's name as a challenge threat here. So, okay, Venus is the challenge threat.
Yeah, I do wonder about that too, but it feels like Charlie is being edited in such a way to be less threatening than maybe he is. I don't know. It's weird, like you said, that no one brings Charlie's name up as a challenge threat, despite how much he has been, you know, vibing in challenges. So maybe it is true that he is there as kind of a shield, but I don't know.
It's interesting because I feel like Charlie, when he was like second place in some of these individual immunity challenges early on, we talked about this like, oh, maybe Charlie needs to dial it back because then maybe people will notice. But then I remember we were also saying like Charlie doesn't necessarily give off that energy as threatening. Like he has more of that baby face, like we talked about preseason. Like he's not necessarily threatening looking physically, so it's like it's interesting. It's like someone who looks like they're going to be a physical threat compared to someone who maybe doesn't look like that, but they are a physical threat and really good at challenges. So I feel like Charlie, he is good at challenges, but he doesn't come off as threatening because of what he looks like.
Yep, I think that's a great way to put it. He doesn't come off as threatening. So I think Charlie's story is definitely the one that I'm kind of most confused by because it feels like we as the viewer are getting a very different story than the people who are actually on the island.
Yeah. So we see Maria. She wants to do a final five with Maria, Charlie, Q, Liz, and Ben.
Yeah, that seems like kind of a weird final five to me, but I'm wondering what you think about that.
I guess it's good for Maria. Maria's got Q, she's got Ben and Charlie. Maybe they're thinking, okay, you cut Liz at 5 and then you go into 4 as potentially like a 3-1 or 2-2 if Charlie and Maria are trying to flip and maybe they go into fire against each other. But I just don't necessarily see Liz or Ben winning the game. So it's sort of like a they're just there right now.
Yeah, I feel like Liz might be the fire loser just because we've seen some stuff about her being bad at fire, like her having to ask someone else to start the fire for her. So I feel like Liz could be the fire loser. Ben could maybe be like a 0 vote finalist, but I definitely agree. Neither of them, from what we've seen, would make a very satisfying winner. Like, I think even Q could beat both of them at Final Tribal, I feel like.
I think Q could beat Liz and Ben at final tribal council. I think it's like it'll be interesting because so many people this season have wanted that resume move. They're talking about taking all the credit for each move. I feel like whoever wins that final immunity will probably throw themselves into fire because they want that resume move.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons I'm not particularly fond of fire now because it feels like now it's just being used as a resume move and not necessarily like something like a strategy thing. So,
Like, I won that final challenge fair and square. What's the point of having a final immunity challenge if then you're a double loser? Because then you have to throw yourself into fire.
right? So, mm, mm.
Ugh, we'll see it in 2 weeks during the finale, but we get to some idol hunting this episode. Everyone is searching for Tiffany's idol. It would be interesting to know, were 2 idols re-hidden out there after Hunter left and now Tiffany left, or was just 1 idol re-hidden because there's not that many days left in the game, so you don't really want everyone to get an idol. And it'll
I
be interesting to see next week if an idol is re-hidden.
I feel like they must have only rehidden one idol because no one like even mentioned the possibility of like, oh, I should keep looking like in case there's 2. which could just be that like they didn't know that Hunter had an idol, but I feel like the production would have shown us like some sort of hint, like, haha, there's actually two. But I feel like giving two people idols in the final several, bad choice. Big mistake, you might even
Yeah.
say.
Unless Q finds both of them, then it's obviously not a big mistake and Christmas won't be canceled. But
Obviously.
everyone's saying this is Tiffany's idol. I would probably guess it's Hunter's idol and was rehidden after Hunter was eliminated.
Yeah. I don't know though. I guess it doesn't really matter whose idol it had
No.
been before, just because I think if it had been Hunter's idol, they probably would have shown us. I'm sure that people did look after Hunter was voted out just in case. So I think they want us to think that it was Tiff's idol. So
And all of this is like 2 days apart, so it's really there's no time in between these tribal councils anymore. I feel like for Venus, she finds this idol. I think she's got fine and good reads with the game. Like she's obviously thinking strategically a lot of the time and she understands the strategy. I feel like we've talked about her social game is a little bit lacking, too blunt with people maybe rubbing them the wrong way in Survivor, maybe not such a good thing. In real life, I think that's great. She like stands up for herself, and I think that's a really good thing. But it seems like she's still rubbing people the wrong way.
yeah, I mean, in real life, you can also rub people the wrong way, and it's not necessarily a good thing either. So I think it really depends. It's hard to make judgments on someone based on like what we see on the television, just because like we're seeing an edited version of them. But I think you're definitely right. Venus's social game leaves a lot to be lacking, or leaves a lot wanting. It is lacking. So I feel like it's one of those things where I feel like she could be a really good player in like a couple of years after she's like had more life experience and maybe learned how to kind of play nice with people she doesn't really like. Because I feel like that's definitely a skill that you develop more as you get older and as you like have to deal with more people that you don't like. Because I guess one thing that I always kind of forget is that Venus is, I wouldn't say very young, but she's like pretty young. She's, I
24.
think, 24. So I feel like that's still fairly young. So I think that, maybe as you get older, she would be a better Survivor player. She's not even a bad Survivor player now, but like you said, social game could be better.
I would say personally, once you hit 25, I'm like the frontal lobe development. I just felt so much smarter at 25.
That's a you thing because I still feel pretty dumb. Um,
No.
so I think definitely interesting. I also thought it was interesting. Venus and Charlie had this conversation where it kind of felt like Venus confessed that she had the idol because she was like, "What if I do have something up my sleeve?" And I wonder if that contributed at all to like her being quote unquote blindsided. Like maybe they did consider like, "Oh, Venus has the idol. Let's not talk as much around her about what's happening." So
Yeah, I think that was her death knell, and I in her exit interview, she was like, "Yeah." That basically got her voted out later this episode, but at the start of the episode, when she finds the idol, I was like, "Yo, if Venus can make a big move here, maybe that could gain her some respect from the jury or the other cast members that think she's not playing, that think she's annoying. Like, that would be a very, very good talking point for tribal council. Like, all you people didn't like me and you thought I was just sitting here looking pretty and not playing the game, calling me a princess day one, and then I played the idol correctly, first of all these other people didn't, and I made a big move with the idol. I was like, yo, I'm excited for Venus. I hope she can pull off a blindside with this. But alas.
we live in the bad timeline where Venus goes home with an idol in her pocket. So
It was also funny when we just see Venus after she finds the idol. She just stands there with Kenzie while Kenzie's looking for the idol. Kenzie's saying that Venus's technique for idol searching is to follow people around who are searching, which reminded me of the scene earlier this season where she's just sort of standing over Hunter while Hunter is searching for the idol. I was like, aw, that's cute.
Yeah, Kenzie's whole monologue about Venus's idol strategy or lack thereof is really funny in the context of knowing that Venus has the idol. But I do think it was interesting because Kenzie did say, like, maybe Venus does have the idol and she's taking all of us for a ride. And that was exactly what was happening. So maybe Kenzie has a better read than she thinks and she should just trust her gut.
Yeah, and Kenzie says that she likes Venus now. Venus is her only ally. So I was like, yo, it's looking up for these women. Maybe they can gain some respect from people. Venus plays the idol correctly, blindsides someone, and that's a game winning move. But RIP, because she says she won't tell anyone. And the worst thing would be going home with an idol in her pocket. And that's both what happened this episode.
She manifested it, but not in the good way.
So we get to the immunity challenge. Jeff says it's a final several left. So we all have to roll our eyes now, I
We
think.
really just can't let Jelinski die, man.
Yeah, pretty much. But then I'm like, is it funny enough meme right now that we just have to keep saying it?
I feel like it was funny when they were talking about episode several, but now it's been like there's been too many several jokes where I'm like, this is now like the fourth or fifth episode where there's been a several joke, and I'm like, please, please. So, and I,
So if I make a several joke in my Instagram caption, would that be a yay or a nay?
I mean, you can definitely do it, but I might not like your Instagram post then.
Will
That
you
might
comment
be
on it?
if I must. But
Yeah.
I feel like someone's gonna bring up several at the final tribal. It's somehow going to come up.
I have several moves under my belt. Let me list all several of them.
Exactly.
See, only like several people would understand the joke if I posted it on Instagram. So that's the thing. I would need the several people that are in to comment something
To
because no one else
really
will know.
support you. Yeah.
Yeah. That I might get haters because seven is not several.
I guess you'll have to figure out whether or not it's worth it.
Hmm. So the immunity challenge, you have to balance this ball on a pole and then navigate obstacles. I really liked the ball maze that they had to do at the end. It made it a close challenge. Literally anyone could win. Everyone got their first ball in. Everyone was working on that second ball, and then people kept messing up. So it's definitely a nail biter challenge.
Yeah, I like this challenge. I like that it was like somewhat new. Like it has some elements that we've seen before, but I don't think we've seen this exact challenge before. And I think it's always good when they can put a new twist on something that might be kind of basic because then as viewers, especially if you watch a lot of Survivor back to back, you're kind of like, oh, this again. But this challenge wasn't that. So I really enjoyed it for that reason also.
Me too. I thought this was a fun challenge. And then we get to the choice of picking people for the pizza reward part of the immunity challenge, which, like last week with the food, we also have food drama this week. So Jeff is going to be like telling everyone, okay, we need to starve the castaways because we keep on getting these good TV moments because everyone is so hungry. And we're going to say, that's not good.
I feel like a lot of the like TV moments are because of Liz's allergies though. So I feel like it's one of those things where Liz makes really good Survivor because she has those allergies that are keeping her from eating coconut. And so she's like super hungry and super pissed off. So I think that like the other people are hungry, but it seems like a lot of them were like especially mad because Maria said like, "Oh, I want to take along the people who are hurting the most physically," and then didn't pick Liz, who is obviously the most physically disadvantaged by the lack of food because she can't even eat some of the food they do have.
Maria really done goofed here. Like her winner equity last week, pretty high after making that big move. Winner equity this week going downhill with Charlie throwing her under the bus, as well as the faux pas of picking people incorrectly here. Like, no matter what, people are probably going to be mad. Everyone is hungry. People are going to be mad with whatever choice you make. But I feel like You have to make your choices and be strong in your decision. Like we saw Q last week, he wasn't taking no shiz from anyone. People offered to sit out and let Liz go, and he said no. These are my choices. So I'm like, if she were strong in her decision and were like, I'm picking these people for XYZ, rather than saying, I want to help the hungry people, and then picking Ben first, and then making people rock, paper, scissors for it, that just makes you look indecisive and wishy washy.
It also kind of makes you more of the bad guy because it's like
Hmm.
if you have a strong justification, people don't have to like your justification. But if you give a justification that's wrong, then people are like, what the heck? So I feel like Maria already like didn't have a lot of winner equity just because like she hasn't gotten as much screen time as I think anyone else left in the game. So it's but this definitely did not bode well for her.
Yeah, I think Charlie played it well here. He steps down and is like, "Don't pick me." It would look really bad if Maria picked Charlie and Ben and just have the Sega 3 there. That is not good numbers wise. So it's good for Charlie sitting out. Kenzie also dropping because she ate at the Applebee's. She says, "Don't pick me," also. I also think it was really bad for Maria saying, "Venus, Liz, and Q, give me reasons why I should pick you." Sort of makes it feel like, oh, I'm the mighty person here. All these three have to beg me for why I should pick them. Just like make your decision. If it is to help the hungry people, say that and then actually pick Liz or Venus who are hungrier than Q potentially. Or if you're like, I need to placate Q because I need Q to be in my pocket, I need Q to vote with me, just be like, I'm trying to build an alliance with this person, da da da. And don't say anything about Applebee's or who's hungrier and just pick Q because you want him in your alliance.
Yeah, I think it's hard just because I'm not sure how public it is that Maria like likes Q. I guess it is pretty public just because she a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, Q is in Maria's pocket." So, I guess it is pretty public that Maria likes Q and is using Q as a number. So, I was going to say maybe she doesn't want to like come out and say that she's using Q as a number, but that doesn't really make sense because, you know, everyone already seems to know that. So,
Yeah, like dawdling over this decision just makes you look bad, and then doing rock, paper, scissors and making people beg for it just makes it look worse. I feel like people, like we said, would be mad no matter what happened and what you picked, but they're sort of be a little bit less mad. Like, here are my reasons why. You can still be mad at me for the reasons, but these are my reasons. Like Liz was still mad at Q last week, even if Liz were taken, maybe she'll still be mad at Q. Other people would be mad at Q because they didn't get Applebee's, but like Q stood for what he stood for, and like you can't really give him too much fault. Like that was his choice. Maria had to make the choice.
yeah. I feel like one thing about this cast is that they seem to take things really personally, where it's like, oh, if you didn't take me, it's because you didn't like me. Like they keep being like, oh, it's all part of the game, but then they definitely don't treat it like part of the game. So I like that though because it's fun.
They all sort of dislike each other, like to people's face and also behind their back. So, sort of
This
fun.
is why we need a live reunion. Rachel and I were talking about this before we started today, but just this cast with a live reunion would be so messy and like all of the best ways. So
A lot of drama on the internet in the Survivor universe right now, but also Maria flubbing the pizza reward choices really makes it easier for everyone to throw her under the bus more. Like, okay, we already wanted to vote her out. Charlie was already shoving her under the bus pre immunity challenge. She wins immunity, so you can still throw her under the bus a little more. Next time, maybe then you can vote Maria out, get people on the Maria dislike train, so it's easier to get her out next time. And Charlie did that really well. He went back. 4 people were the pizza losers, 3 people were the pizza winners. And whenever, the losers go back from a reward challenge, they're all sulking. You can sort of bond over that anger and shared dislike of whatever happened. And here it's an even more shared dislike of Maria's choices here because she made people beg, because she made people do rock, paper, scissors, and their dislike of Q getting more food. So it's like, it just so easy to throw them under the bus.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like Q never really did anything wrong. Like Maria picked him. He wasn't like begging for her to pick him. She made the choice, but I feel like Q is kind of. Are you familiar with the concept of a bitch eating crackers?
No.
It's basically like this idea that there are some people where it's like they've started to annoy you so much that anything that they do annoys you because it's like,
Mm.
oh, look at that bitch eating crackers. Or it's like a normal person eating crackers like doesn't bother you, but if it's like that person that you hate, it's like, oh, that bitch eating crackers. And so I feel like it's one of those things where Q, no matter what Q did, they were going to find some way to be mad at him because Q's kind of like the person they all love to hate a little. But I just felt like them hating Q was funny to me because it's like, do you want him to say like, no, Maria, don't take me? Because Kenzie did, but also like, you don't have to say that. If someone else wants to bring you, they want to bring you.
Exactly. Yeah. Q didn't have to step out also. If Maria picked him, Maria picked him. She shouldn't have made them rock, paper, scissors. She should have just picked him straight out rather than having him and Liz do that. Because then it just gives people more ammunition to be like, Maria, this is such a bad choice. Now we dislike you, Maria, and we dislike you, Q. But at least it was funny. Q realizes he shouldn't have been on the pizza reward because he just ate, and then you see him like smiling and eating the pizza and then talking in confessional how he ate 23 slices of pizza and then laughing about it. I'm like, this is so funny. Like, he realizes that it was bad for him to go, but hey, Maria picked me, I'm gonna go eat a lot of pizza.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it wasn't his bad choice, so maybe he feels protected from it.
It's just so funny. I'm like the burger last week and no one eating the burger. Liz doesn't get any pizza and then Q is eating 23 slices.
I hope that's an exaggeration because if he actually ate 23 slices of pizza, I am afraid of him. So,
Maybe the small survivor slices.
for sure.
But Liz says she's not taking shiz from anyone anymore and she's going to speak her mind. So she tells Maria her mind, and then she tells everyone that she let herself be angry for the sake of other people. And she thinks because she did this for so long, it gave her all of these allergies.
That felt very like woo woo to me, where I was kind of like, that's really not how allergies work, but like go off queen. So, I mean, good for Liz if she feels like she learned something about herself, but like I said, not really how allergies work.
Yo, I agree with that. I couldn't like find the words, but I agree with the woo woo energy of it because I feel like sometimes this happens to like us or our friends or me. I'm like, you think of something and you're like, oh, it's probably because of this, but there's like low key no way it could be because of that. It reminds me of Banu's asking God why he would put Banu on Survivor for 6 days. It's like, obviously that's not really what's happening, but you're assigning blame to something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's also allergies can be hard because like they're not always stuff that you control most of the time. In fact, you cannot control your allergies. So I feel like Liz being like, oh, it's because I've been so angry or haven't let myself express my anger. Like that's a way of taking back control and being like, oh, if I express my emotions more, maybe my allergies won't affect me as much. Which like not how it works, but again, more power to her if it makes her feel happy. As long as she's not like trying to shill some like MLM supplement to get people to release their anger so they don't have allergies, then like fine by me.
It'd be wild though if you like believed that and then you start just being very blunt and angry to let out all of the anger and then your allergies got reversed.
We should do a case study on Liz. Liz, hit me up. We need to study so much about your allergies and your anger.
So after the reward challenge or after the reward happened, after immunity, it's basically a Q versus Venus vote. Venus basically should have kept her mouth shut. Don't need to tease Charlie with some advantage, making her seem very, very sketchy. And it sort of reminded me of like, okay, it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. Q is not being weird about some potential advantage. Venus is. It adds this element of unknown. Whereas Q, even though he is chaotic and he might be annoying you on the camp, Venus might have an advantage, and that's way more dangerous considering we're going to be final six next week compared to Q, who we might not think has any advantages.
Yep. I feel like it's also one of those things where we were talking about like Q, Liz, and Venus are all in some ways playing the same role of being like the wild card in the group. And so like one wild card is fine. Two is pushing it. But then if you have like three different wild cards that you can't control, eventually like you need to do something about that. Otherwise the game is just going to get away from you because there's so many people that you can't predict.
And similar to the chaotic role, we were talking like Q, Liz, and Venus are sort of in that position where they made themselves such a big threat that, oh, let's just keep bringing them along because no one's going to vote for them at the end because of whatever XYZ thing that they did. So, like you're saying, with having three chaotic people is too much, having three people fit that role of let's just drag them along because we don't think they can win a jury vote is also too many. Like they're taking up seats at final tribal. One person like that is fine, 0 vote finalist, bring them along, but you can't really have 3 or 4 people filling that role.
Exactly. So I think it was, I don't want to say good that Venus specifically was voted out, but I think that for like the health of the game, like it would have been kind of disappointing to just see three goats make it to the end. So I think that it was good like for the enjoyability of the viewer that we got one of the people that we generally perceive as a goat out.
Although I think like Venus and Q could make a good argument at Final Tribal. It's the respect thing that might be a little bit more difficult compared
Mm-hmm.
to Liz and Ben. I feel like fill that more goat-y kind of role. I think
Mm-hmm.
Venus could potentially win if she could sway some people and have some social game towards the end. Q could potentially win. You know, he's a very, very good salesperson in real estate. I think he could sway some people with his talking. He just needs to gain some respect. It seems like he's got some people that personally dislike him. So, similar to Venus, who has some haters on the cast, Q seems to have some haters. So, I feel like they fill that similar role of maybe they could win if they could sell their story to the jury, but they've got some people that really, really dislike them potentially on the jury or in the cast still in the game compared to Liz and Ben. I just think probably aren't winning the game.
Yeah, I do think that Q, it's kind of backed off as much of like, oh, Q is super annoying. Like, yeah, we got them being annoyed that he got to eat again, but that was mostly directed at Maria. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see if Q is the winner. They definitely need to start like tying some things up in the next couple of episodes. Well, I guess there's not that many episodes left, but they definitely need to start tying things up to make it believable. Like, oh, this person actually would vote for Q. So I'm curious to see what happens.
Maybe they don't vote for Q because it seems like Liz is a potential hater of Q and Ben is a disliker of Q. So it's like, okay, would these two vote for Q or not? There was a secret scene where we do see like Liz and Q bonding. And so maybe she would still vote for him, kind of thing. But it would be interesting to see, like, okay, could Liz and Ben, even though they dislike Q, vote for him? Similar, like the people that disliked Venus, could they get over it and vote for Venus at the end? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, so I think we'll definitely have a better idea when we know who the final five is to know, again, who's actually going to be winning. Because I feel like it really depends on who the final five is, because you can pretty easily figure out who the final three is, I feel like, after that. So,
So, the end of this episode, I think Charlie did a good job. This was like many times where we see Charlie narrating. This was a good episode for Charlie. It seems like he has this confessional right before Tribal where he's like, okay, with this move, if I go Venus versus Q, how do I pull in the people that I burn back in with me? Because if he votes Venus, he's potentially burning Maria and Q. If he votes Q out, or if he votes Q out, then he's burning Maria. If he votes Venus out, then still he guess he's going with everyone else, but like burning the women like Liz and Kenzie who wanted to vote Venus out. And I think this is why everyone gets on the same page at the end and everyone is voting Venus out here, because we didn't see it in the episode, but Charlie's probably thinking, like, okay, I don't want Kenzie and Liz mad at me. I don't want Q and Maria mad at me. So basically, we have to convince everyone to vote one person out, and everyone's going to be on the same page. So no one is pissed off. Similar to like Kenzie being sad and mad at the start of the episode because she was left out of the Tiffany vote. Everyone should be on the same page. And so it seems like he probably used that Venus information of her being a little bit sketchy, dancing around this fake advantage, real advantage, to maybe flip Kenzie and Liz to vote Venus out and not Q out.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like Kenzie only wanted Venus out because she and Venus are like more similar archetypes than like her and Q. And so I think it makes sense why she would want to vote out Q over Venus, but it also makes sense why she would be totally fine being like, yeah, I can still also vote out Venus. Like, it wasn't like Venus was an ally or like someone that would be a deal breaker for her to vote out. It was just someone that like it would make more sense for her game to maybe keep her around as a shield for a little longer. So I think definitely makes sense how everyone got on the same page. And it just made sense also because I feel like Venus, Q has been the main backup vote, but I wouldn't be surprised if Venus was like also a backup vote for a lot of the recent votes that we've seen.
Yeah, and I think it's good for Charlie also, like not being wishy-washy, like Maria picking people for the pizza reward. Like, you convinced everyone to vote a specific way rather than telling the women, like, okay, I'll vote for Q with you all, and then later at Tribal voting for Venus, and then Kenzie and Liz going back to camp being like, WTF, like, why would you tell us this and go a different way, and being pissed off at Charlie. I think for Charlie here, if he actually did convince everyone to be on the same page, like that is a good thing because you are telling people what you think rather than being vague, like, oh, yeah, I'll think about that plan, or telling everyone that you're actually with them and you're voting with them, but then you vote a different way, then you just look very, very sketchy.
And I think also not trying to force it to be a live tribal where he didn't like try to drop at tribal, like, I think Venus has an idol. Because A, that would have tipped Venus off, but also B, I feel like whenever there's a live tribal, it just gets a lot messier the next day.
Exactly. So at Tribal Council, Jeff is nice again with the popcorn. Last time, 2 times ago, this time he's bringing them one piece of licorice.
I just thought it was funny that he handed Ben the licorice and then Ben had to be the one to be the licorice distributor. Like, what if Ben was stone cold and was just like, I'm going to eat this whole stick of licorice myself? Like, that would have been amazing. Like, awful, but amazing.
What he should have done is given it to Liz or Venus, who didn't go on the reward and are very hungry, and then it would have been so funny if they just scarfed it down and ate the whole thing in front of everyone.
That would have been funny, especially because I could see Liz doing it without like really thinking about doing it and then giving an apology. Like, thanks for letting me have that. Like, I could see
Yeah,
that happening.
like
Or like not
you hoe
realizing,
bags.
yeah, not realizing that maybe she was meant to share.
You didn't bring me on reward. All of you people ate, and I didn't get to eat, so I'm gonna eat this whole thing and then just scarf it down.
Yep.
So Venus and Q are bickering at Tribal Council. Like, good for her because she can hold her own. I feel like a lot of people probably don't do that, but like, good for her. She held her own and she was fighting with Q at Tribal, but also, like, this isn't good for Survivor. This is probably good for like a workplace if you're trying to fight for some equality in the workplace. But at Tribal Council, you probably don't want to be fighting with people outright like this.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where you're just airing all your dirty laundry. Everyone knows that you and Q don't like each other, and you're just like exasperating people. So I think that definitely could have been done maybe like before tribal or just like never. So
So Liz, she's groaning again, and Jeff makes her groan a second time.
yeah, that made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, at least it wasn't captioned this time, though. Unless you're watching with closed captions, she just groans twice.
Yeah, I watched with closed captions, so
Liz groaning in the square brackets. So I thought it was funny. You see, Q actually is wearing the Q skirt at tribal council. Like when they stand up after the votes have been read and they're going back to camp, he's wearing the Q skirt.
I did not notice that, but I kind of love that. Like, you go, King. Slay the Q skirt.
Yeah. And like he's not just in Maria's pocket, he's in Maria's Q skirt.
He's in Maria's Q skirt pouch.
Mhm. Like a kangaroo. Like a
Exactly.
Joey.
He is a baby kangaroo.
Change his name from Q to Joey. So I think it's wild that Venus did not play her idol when it's her versus Q. It was Hunter versus Q. It was Tiffany versus Q. Like here, Venus knew that her name was the second option. Like, votes are going to Q and some votes are going to you. And also, like, it's not like you didn't know your name was being brought up as a second option or as a potential blindside, but it does seem like the Q bluffing was too good, which I'm like, oh, honestly, though, like, if Q can sell this and was like, "We tricked 3 people," they don't really know that all 3 of them have idols. They would only know that Tiffany maybe had an idol and didn't play it, but, like, that would be some good jury talk because your bluffing and everyone's bluffing was so good that all these people got voted out, and the jury would know that 3 people back to back got voted out with idols. The castmates at the end wouldn't know, but the jury knows that, and that's some pretty big deal, I would say.
Yeah, I just like if people are telling you it's gonna be Q and you have an idol, like you should just assume it's gonna be you. So I feel like definitely Venus flubbed that there.
I hope it happens next week. For Pete, it would be so funny. But, like, Jeff also says it's the last time to play the shot in the dark. So, if Q is getting votes and he doesn't play the shot in the dark this time, he didn't play the shot in the dark last time, and he didn't play the shot in the dark in the Hunter vote, when it's like Hunter believed, Tiffany believed that Q was the one going home, does that not tip you off? Red flag a little bit? Like this person that knows they're going home, like Mariah played the shot in the dark, why would he not play the shot in the dark?
I think the only answer that you could say is that if you use the shot in the dark, you don't have a vote. So if it's a split vote or a split vote, maybe you're like, oh, the reason he's not playing the shot in the dark is to try to force it to go to his side of the split. Or like if it's a 4-3 split, that's different from a 4-2 split. So that's the only explanation I could think of.
Yeah, it's like if it were a close split, then you're like, okay, Q wouldn't play the shot in the dark because he would need that number to get the votes to work. But if it's like you think it's unanimous against Q and he doesn't play anything, I think that would be a little bit of a red flag.
It should be, but it could also be that, I guess I was going to say maybe they don't announce the shot in the dark until after idols have to be played, but also like I don't know.
But I really wish we got Ponderosa this season. Like we're saying, a live reunion would be hella good TV considering the cast is fighting a lot on the internet. Ponderosa videos here would be so funny of like, okay, Hunter getting sent there, and then you see Tiffany getting sent there, and then them talking about both of them not playing an idol, and then Venus getting sent there, and then all 3 of them realizing the same thing happened 3 times in a row would be so funny to see.
The Q idol support group.
So the next time is the final 6. I feel like pretty good spot for Charlie potentially because it could be 4 versus 2 where the 2 are Maria and Q, or it could be Maria, Q, Charlie, Ben versus like Liz and Kenzie. So Charlie's in the middle. I feel like he gets to decide. He seems like he's in a good spot going into next week, unless Maria is like, yo, I need to vote Charlie out. And then it's like Charlie versus Maria at 6, which would be a bad spot.
I would love a Charlie versus Maria showdown at 6, but I feel like at even numbers, they definitely do less risky things just because none of them want to like go to rocks. So
Yeah, I would say a 5 or a 4, maybe. Try to get out your number one at a final 5 or at fire, but then you're like, okay, you're running out of time. But like Maria said, you got to run the red light. So
well,
I'm excited.
if you mess up at fire, that's bad. So
Yeah, I'm excited for Final 6 next week. It should be good. There's a lot of drama happening. People are disliking Q still. People are having drama at Ponderosa. So, should be a fun end game to this season.
yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting end game too, especially because there's not tons of like advantages hanging over our heads, and we know that it's not going to be advantage getting.
Yeah. So let us know in the comments what you thought of this episode. Did you think it was funny how we have more food drama this week? Did you think Maria flubbed the pizza reward choices? Yes or no? And do you think Q should have been voted out? Do you think Venus should have played the idol, or is the Q fake plan just too good for everyone that they continue to keep getting tricked? Let us know in the comments down below. And thank you all so much for watching. We will see you all next week.